If you love it and it's what you feel called to do it because you love it, not to check a box and not to get famous or be successful with it. Just do it for the love. If I have a relationship with somebody, just because I'm going through something difficult doesn't mean that I get to neglect that relationship. And so it's the same thing with God. True sacrifice, right? And cutting on the flesh, it's like, do I surrender or am I living for me? And that's the biggest struggle on a daily basis, right? That I think every human goes through, whether they realize it or not.
Relationship with God. So first of all, thank you for coming, bro.
Absolutely.
And this is cool because I don't really know you that much.
Yeah.
Which is awesome too.
Absolutely.
Like I love doing it with people that I don't know too much because even if I've seen them the past like 4.5 years here and there with meetings, like it's always just surface level at meetings.
Totally.
And it's rare to get to sit down with someone, for an hour and just talk about stuff, man. So yeah, it's cool. I mean, I met you at the stag, so that was pretty cool, man. So when did your whole relationship with God start? Like when did that whole journey start?
Totally, dude. So, I mean, I grew up in the church, was in plays and went to the church retreats with the women because my mom would go and they would bring their kids and had a big brother, because they had the big brother, little brother program. And, my dad wasn't really present, so I was always around church people. But I didn't really think about God. I was a kid. I just went. My friends were there. My mom dragged me along, and that was just kind of it. And then for a long time, I don't really know that I ever really hated God or was against God, but I definitely, for some reason, just had this distaste towards religion. I always felt really uncomfortable around people who believed in Jesus or believed in God and were really open about it. If you believed in God but you kept it to yourself, I didn't care. But as soon as you started talking about it, it just made my skin crawl. And when I got sober, part of that process was a man sat down with me and he said, do you put the sun up in the morning? Do you put the sun down at night? When a wave comes crashing, can you stop it? I said, no, that's science, I thought. And he goes, okay, well, is science a power greater than you? I said, yeah, science is a power greater than me. He said, great, then can you believe in that? And I said, yeah, I can believe in that. And dude, I heard so many different things over the years of my sobriety of like, because I struggled with God for a long time. I thought I found God and then thought I didn't find God at like 3 years sober. And I had this sponsor, his name was Jan, and he said, do you believe in right and wrong? And I said, yeah, I believe in right and wrong. He said, so you believe in some sort of moral law? I said, yeah, I believe in a moral law. He said, okay, so if there is a moral law, that means there is a moral law maker. I said, yes. And he said, is that you? I said, no. And he said, okay, great. He said, let's believe in the moral lawmaker then. But it wasn't really until I got out to Phoenix in 2021 that I truly started to dive into my relationship with God and move from like a surface level connection with God to a actual relationship with a power greater than myself, ultimately.
Yeah. And so what were some of those main differences where it's like how did that look like, the surface level relationship versus the actual deep connection with something greater than yourself?
I think a surface level relationship with God for me was like when I would go places and I was asked to speak or I was sitting down with somebody and going through some work and I'm talking about God, I would speak it with my lips, but behind the scenes, I have 5 minutes of prayer in the morning, 5 minutes of prayer at night. And there was a whole lot of Matteo in between.
I see.
And so, and I was just talking about this, 30, 40 minutes ago. If I was in a relationship with somebody and I spent 5 minutes in the morning with them at night, and I spent 5 minutes of my day with them in the morning, 5 minutes of my day with them at night, and no other time with them, my relationship would not be good. But I was doing that with God for a long time. And when I moved out here, I was taught about what an actual relationship is. And a relationship is one, time, but it's give and take. And so I had been taking from God a lot getting job opportunities, getting better financial statuses, getting a car, an apartment, all these things. But when it came to giving back, yeah, I was doing some of the stuff that recovery has asked me to do, but I wasn't doing the other stuff in my community or with my family or with the other things, and I was just kind of hiding out in recovery and neglecting these other things.
Right, right. No, yeah, that makes perfect sense, and that's very relatable. You know, because it's like, and I've been there so many times where it's like I'm only reaping the benefits of God, and like I'm leaving the rest.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, like for a long time I felt called to do something deep down inside, and like I was being disobedient for a very long time, and it would just tug on me, you know, and part of it was because of a lack of a deeper connection with that power, you know, and so so I know you do music too, right? And I will intertwine these in a little bit. So how long have you been making music?
I've been making music probably for about 10, 11 years, but I've always loved music. The first memory I have of loving music was I was sitting in my mom's 2002 red Ford Focus. I must have been 5 or 6. She had just gotten it. It was a summer in Chicago. We were driving with the windows down, and she was blasting a Boys to Men CD. And I just remember feeling so engulfed in the music and singing at the top of my lungs with my mom in this car. And I just remember chasing that for a long time. And so, you know, for a while I didn't know what that looked like. I just sang along to music, or, you know, would remember lyrics and just kind of memorize them. And then a bunch of my boys started freestyling all the time when we were hanging out. I would get into that, and ultimately started making music when I had, funny enough, I'd met a drug dealer of mine, and he went to the studio, and he was like, yo, you rap? And I was like, yeah. He's like, let me hear something. And I rapped, and he was like, oh, dude, you're nice. Come with me. And so I started recording music with him.
Damn, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. And so, like I saw a recent post that you made, right, and that you know, God has been pulling you towards a different direction with that music. And so how does that look like now versus like when you were making different kinds of music? Like how did that overall look like?
Yeah, man, it's really funny. So over the last 10, 11 years, I've made music that I've felt called to make, right? And I've always just made whatever I felt like in the moment, whether it was about, I mean, I remember writing a song called Peace of Mind, and I wrote that song on my lunch break in 20, 30 minutes and recorded it, mixed it in 20, 30 minutes because I was sitting at work and I didn't like my job. And I remember another job a few years ago where I sat down and went to record this song, or went to write this song, and it was called Stop My Stressin'. And it was literally because I was having a bad day at work, felt overwhelmed, and I just wrote that.
Right.
And so about 9 months ago, I was doing some work with a guy, and we were talking about fear. And he said something along the lines of like, well, look at you, dude. You don't experience fear. And I said, excuse me? And I said, dude, I said, God told me that he wants me to stop making secular music and to start making music that glorifies him, but I'm too afraid to do it. And he was like, oh, really? When did you, like, how long have you been dealing with that? I was like, I didn't know that until right now. And it was in that moment he called me like, hey, I'm asking you to be obedient. And I struggled with it all day. And that night I texted the dude who had been managing my music for a while. He's a really, really good friend of mine. I've known him the last 8 years. And I'd call him my best friend for the last 8 years, and told him like, hey, this is going to sound crazy, but God told me that he doesn't want me to make the music that I've been making. I have to delete everything and start from scratch. And so I deleted my Instagram, deleted my TikTok, deleted my Facebook, deleted everything off of streaming platforms, and started completely from scratch. But I took a hiatus for about 2-3 months of no recording, no social media. And then about, I don't know, it was probably like December, January, I had re-downloaded everything again and started everything from scratch in this new lane.
Nice, that's awesome, man. And that's it's a brave thing to do, you know, especially in the world that we live in today, and the society that we live in, and our, you know, people our age too. How old are you?
I'm 27.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm 26. So like, yeah, people our age. I mean, you know what it's all about nowadays, right? And so, what were some of what did some of those mental and spiritual battles look like?
Yeah. I think the biggest one at first was a initial kind of jerk reaction of like, but what if people don't like it? And there was fear, you know, because I had built a buzz and a platform off of the music that I was making and the kind of persona that I had as an artist. And I just remember like stepping into rooms and people would put on a beat and I'd make a whole song in 3 minutes. Literally the first time I ever heard the beat, and I'd be freestyling something and people were like, dude, this is a hit.
That's impressive.
And so like I was like, dude, I don't know about the Christian world. I barely have read the Bible ever. Like, what? Why is it this? And I remember telling God, I was in prayer, and I said, dude, I don't want to give this up. People like this. And He said, but my people don't. And I said, okay, you know. And so that was the first one. And it was hard, but, you know, that was a really, really quick transition for me. Like I said, it was, maybe 8 hours before I decided, okay, fine, I'm going to be obedient to this. The biggest one has been with releasing. Over the last 8-9 months, since about September, I just wasn't sure. I was like, when do you want me to release? And I just kept hearing, not yet, not yet, not yet. And I wanted so badly to drop music and get back into the routine and the groove of dropping and releasing and promoting. And He just said no. And He didn't give me a clear timeline. And it was about beginning of March. I just felt this like, okay, go ahead, pick your date and release. And at first I wasn't sure. And so I like would talk to people about it, but I didn't say anything on social media or anything like that. And then I just got confirmation after confirmation, because it was like I was getting booked for performances, and people were like, yo, come out to this open mic. I showed people your stuff. They want you to come perform. And they were like Christian open mics. And so I got to connect with other local Christian hip hop artists, and ultimately got invited out to another one, performed at a young adults ministry, and just got booked for a couple more. And so I just feel like now God's like, all right, like, you've taken the time, you've been patient, you've sat in the waiting. I still think that there's more to learn, and I think He's still working on me in that kind of aspect of my life. But I feel like He's given me the go ahead of like, all right, now you can release some stuff. Let's start to show people what you've done.
That is so interesting, man. That's so beautiful too, and I feel like everybody has experienced that in one way or another, you know. And so, like, what would you tell somebody that is like struggling to follow their dreams, especially if they feel like if they're called to do it? Like, what would you tell somebody?
You know, even if you're called to do it, don't forget why you enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, whether I get millions of people who stream my music or it's 70 people from my friend group that listen to it, I make music because I love it. And I've always loved music, and that's why I make it at the end of the day. Now, the cool part is people also enjoy it. But whether or not they did, it's all rooted in this fact of, especially now, it's rooted in the fact that I love making it, and it's worship. I get to sit and talk about my relationship with God, and a lot of these songs that are going to be coming out over the next year are all from an album that I'm writing called Conversations with God, and they're all personal prayers that I've had, or personal conversations that I've had with God about fear, about doubt, about other people, about anything. And it's supposed to be a really intimate project, because I know people have conversations like this, whether they're praying to God or they're just talking about it with another person across from them. And I want people to understand that, like, it's all part of the process and all part of the journey. And so I say all that to say, like, if you love it and it's what you feel called to do do it because you love it, not to check a box and not to get famous or be successful with it. Just do it for the love.
Right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's the journey that you're living.
Mhm.
You know, that's initially like the goal. It's constantly living the journey and progressing in that, you know.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man, and it's brave and it's huge, like, yeah, like that. It's inspiring, bro. Really, it really is. So what kind of message are you hoping people get from your music?
Mm. That's a really good question. I don't, it's funny. I don't think I necessarily ever go into a track hoping to portray any type of message.
I see. Yeah.
Because, like, this first one is called Conversations with God. I've already started planning the second album, and the second album is called Testimony Talk.
Okay.
And the reason why I say I don't go into it looking to portray any type of message is because they're literally just me going in and sharing the truth of my heart in that moment. And I've made songs. I recently found out my grandma may have dementia, and I remember just making a song that talked like all I said was like I was just made to praise God. And even in those low moments, like I was just still trying to make sure that my heart posture stayed the same with my relationship, because same thing, if we go back to the physical realm of everything, if I have a relationship with somebody, just because I'm going through something difficult doesn't mean that I get to neglect that relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with God, and in that moment that's what I tried to do. And I remember she was in the hospital, I'm making this song. I finished making the song, had sent it to my buddy Jordan, and not even 5-10 minutes later my uncle called me and he was like, hey, your grandma just got released from the hospital. Right? And I'm not saying that because I made that song or because I kept that same heart posture that like my grandma got released. All I'm saying is that like I kept my heart posture the same of like this is the relationship that I'm focused on. And even when it was uncomfortable or difficult, when the positive came, it didn't change my heart posture in any way. I wasn't like, oh, thank you, God, now. Like, it was just like, I already was like, yo, I love you, thank you, this is the relationship that we have, and nothing will change that. So when it happened, nothing was different. There was a thanksgiving, but it wasn't out of like, you did it, look what I did, and look what you did. It was like, no, you were going to do it anyways.
Right, yeah. And so, like, to piggyback off that, like, what are some of the ways that your relationship with God has strengthened through making music? Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to come with, it's funny, I was thinking about this yesterday while I was driving, because I'd seen something that talked about it, and they said worship is not just when you feel like it. And it really made me think about how many times I make music because I feel like it. And there are times where I do it when I don't, but really trying to take those times to write music when I don't feel like it, especially now, because at the end of the day, the music is supposed to be to glorify Him. And so if the music is to glorify Him, then it actually doesn't matter if I feel like it. I'm just supposed to be writing. Now, when I feel like it, it's easier, but it's not supposed to be easy, right? There's sacrifice in it, and it takes work. I think another big one is just the fact that I actually take the time to consider what He wants me to do with it, right? Like, hey, when do you want me to release? Hey, do you want me to go to this open mic? When I'm at these open mics, I'm used to the secular world, right, where I'm walking out into a stage and I want everybody to look at me. And a big thing that I talk about before I perform is like, if I come up here and all you remember is me and some song I wrote, I didn't do my job. I'm not here to have you remember me or remember the music. I'm here to be able to bring you into the presence of God that I experienced with this music. And that's all I can hope for.
Yeah. Dude, that is so interesting, man. And that's like it's such a genuine, that is really like genuine of you, you know, and it shows the genuineness of your relationship with God as well, you know, and yeah, because Cause like sometimes like with the content that I make, sometimes like my motives are good,
Mm-hmm.
but it could be that I'm also like trying to reap the benefits still, you know. Even though I'm talking with good intentions or sharing with good intentions, you know.
Well, because deep down, I want the glory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Deep down,
yeah.
I want people to look at me, and I want them to see my music and tell me how great I am and how talented I am, and I have to combat that,
Right,
because
exactly.
it's not about me.
Yeah.
Even this, right? Like, someone may watch it and be like, dude, this was fire.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they could say it's the best episode you've ever done.
Uh-huh.
And like, at the end of the day, everything that I say is either a testimony of how God has worked in my life,
Exactly.
or it's God speaking through me.
Mhm.
And so I'm just a pencil in God's hands at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and just like you said, it's hard to combat that because, like, once people start saying it, like, it starts feeding your ego, you know, and it starts feeding that side of you that's against you, you know, that wants you to think that it's because of you why you're here. So like what? So you talked a little bit. How is because I've never experienced a community of like Christian hip hop. The Christian hip hop scene. So like, how is that?
Yeah, dude, it's really
That's
dope.
pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
you know, because I was in the scene a little bit, not much, but I didn't know there was like a big Christian hip hop community.
It's actually really funny, man. So this is ego and pride, right? And I talked to a buddy about this before we went out to the first open mic, but I go out to this open mic, and beforehand I'm like, dude, I'm probably going to be the best artist there, you know, and just because, you know, I'm used to, and it's no shade to the Christian hip-hop community, but a lot of Christian hip-hop that I've heard in the past just isn't my taste. And it's usually, like, poorly produced or mixed. And once again, this is not me saying it as a rule. That's just been the experience that I had up until that point with Christian hip-hop. And there was a few Christian hip-hop artists that I heard that was good quality and I enjoyed, but up until that point, I didn't know them. And so I go to this open mic, man, and everyone was just super welcoming. It kind of reminded me of the recovery space where, like, I was new, and so everyone was just like, yo, dude, welcome. It's so nice to meet you. Like, glad you came out. You know, when they heard me perform, people were like, dude, that was awesome. Like, I'd love to connect more. Even if we don't, like, connect about music, I'd love to just get some lunch or some coffee and, like, just get to know you. And so it's just different. Like I said, in the rap game that I came from, dude.
It's so egotistical.
Yeah, and it's a dog-eat-dog world, right? Like, no one wants to see you do better than them, and everyone just kind of, they're cool with you doing well as long as you're not doing better than them. And so people will talk to you, but it's very surface. No one's asking you to get coffee or lunch. No one's asking you to hang out outside of music. It's like, yo, you're dope. We should collab. And it's like, I don't know you. I actually don't, like, yeah, I heard some of your music and you're good, but how do I know that you and I are going to have a good time in the studio, or like that we're actually going to make something that feels authentic or genuine? It just feels very forced.
They're in it for the output.
Yeah, and I remember living in Philly, and this dude came to, I had a 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. session on New Year's Eve to New Year's Day. And this dude came through, and he was like, yo, this is fire. We should make a song. And I was like, yeah, dude, we'll talk about it. And he was like, no, like, we should make something tonight. And I was like, yo, like, let it happen authentically. Like, if we're going to make something, we're going to make something. And he was like, well, let me just hop on this. And I was like, no, that's not the vision that I have for this song. And I remember I took a nap in the middle of the session. My engineer was mixing, and I went to the live room and just was sleeping. And I woke up like 20, 30 minutes later, and this kid was recording. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm putting a verse on this. I was like, no, get out. And I don't like doing that, but it's like, it robbed us of the opportunity to make something. Like, I truly believe that every song I've made, even if it wasn't to glorify God, like, God can still use that. And was still present in that moment. But I go back into, like, living in my will if I force something. And I'm just like, oh, I'm going to record on this track while this dude's sleeping, and he's going to love it. And instead, right, I get kicked out of the studio. And that's what happened that night for that dude. And once again, we didn't he ended up, kind of beefing with me and not wanting to hang out afterwards or come by the studio, and that's okay. And ultimately he lost the opportunity to collab, and I lost the opportunity to collab because of that experience.
Exactly. Yeah, man, it's kind of weird, and not saying like everybody in the scene is bad, but yeah, it was kind of weird experiencing it. You meet some good people, some bad people, just like anything. But
Exactly.
what are some of the relationships that you have built so far in the hip hop Christian space?
Yeah, I mean, dude, a lot of it is just local, right?
Yeah.
A lot of local Christian hip hop artists. There's a guy, he's really, really dope guy. Love his music. He goes by Deliric. And I met him at the last open mic, not this past one, but the first one I went to. And I loved his music, but he had bounced before I got a chance to perform. And he got to hear me perform this time. And so I found out him and his wife had moved here from Dallas and planted a church up in like Northwest Phoenix. And so he actually reached out to me to come perform at their youth ministry in October. And then there's some other ones. There's a guy named Church. He hosted the last open mic, shot his music video there, connected with him a bit at the event. I mean, dude, there's a lot of dope talent in Arizona for Christian hip hop, but it's super underground, right? And you really do have to go to those events to know about these guys because they're local. And so, I'm sure eventually, right, I'll be able to maybe network with some other ones as things hopefully grow for me. But as of right now, it's super local to Phoenix.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. And so how long have you been involved in that?
I mean, as far as like networking with artists locally here, not since March.
Okay.
Before that, I was very to myself, recorded everything. My friends knew, people at my church knew, that kind of stuff, but I did not really branch out because I was just very hesitant with the direction that God had given me.
Hey, I wanted to take a quick second and thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch these videos. Hope you're enjoying the conversation as much as I am. If these videos have impacted you in any way possible, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe button. And if there's anything that you would like to see, whether it be like character development, something that has to do with recovery or spiritual growth, let me know in the comments and I'll implement it on my next video. Yeah, interesting. How do you balance being real about struggle, like real life struggles, while keeping faith in your music? Because I know you said that you sort of implement that, and I find that honestly that's awesome, right? And like I love when people are like vulnerable, especially when it comes to their art.
Yeah. I think there's a way to do it. I think we're going to be invulnerable in music. There's a way to do it that's tastefully, right? Because it's one thing for me to go in there and I don't feel this way today, but I have in my life, right? And just talk about wanting to end my own life, right? I don't necessarily think that is productive or beneficial to people for me to go on there and just talk about that. Yeah. And so a lot of my music, even when it's uncomfortable, the first single I'm dropping is called a song called Faith in You. And that whole song was a point in my walk with God where I was struggling to have faith in God. And it talks a lot about how I just don't know what I'm doing. And I'm leaning on you for it, and I'm hoping that I'm trusting you, but I don't actually know that I am. And so it's even though it was uncomfortable, and I talk about the discomfort in that song and the places that brought me to, it's not in a place of I'm just miserable, right? And I just want to end my life, or just this or just that. It's no. This is what I'm experiencing, but even through that, I know what you are and who you are in my life, right? Yeah. So that's how I try and balance it. And then, some songs don't talk about struggles, right? Some songs are just fun and they're enjoyable and they're lighthearted and they're just kind of to praise God. And then other ones, I'm still a rapper, right? And so I like to talk my trash and so sometimes it's I have a song called Too Late to Change. And that whole song is about how people say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And it's like, that's actually not true, right? Like, as a result of what God has done in my life, I am not the same man that I was 8 years ago. And so if in the last 8 years God can mold and shape me into a different man, then I don't care how old you are, right? If you let God do that work in you, it can still happen.
Yeah, 100%, man. 100%. So like where are you at with God right now? How does your relationship with God look like, and like what are the things that you're doing aside
Yeah.
from music that are strengthening your relationship with God?
Yeah, really good question. It's actually a good question now, because the last couple of weeks my prayer has diminished a little bit. I've spent a little bit less time in prayer. I've spent a significant amount of time less in the Bible. And I've been doing all my normal stuff, right? All recovery related, the checkbox stuff, right? Not doing it to check boxes, but just doing, your normal stuff, home group, service commitment, sponsees, that kind of thing. And I'm still going to church and super involved in that. But it's one of those things that, like, I can feel it, right? And I can feel that I'm waking up and I am spending a little bit less time in prayer, and I'm spending a little bit less time in prayer at night before bed. Now, the one thing that hasn't changed is I am still praying throughout my day, taking some time to like do some 10-step stuff and check in with people when stuff is coming up. But those kind of like fundamental basics have just slipped a little bit. And I'm honest about that because, it's funny because when platforms like this become a thing, people feel like when they come up here, they're supposed to be like, oh, well, I pray and I meditate and I get into the Bible and I'm doing this and I'm doing that.
I do not like that at all. It's like,
tell the truth. Let people know that you're falling short, because then when they fall short in their journey, they understand that, like, it's not that it's okay, but like other people have done it and they can either, one, learn from your mistake and not fall into the same pattern, or two, like, bro, give yourself some grace to understand that you're not perfect. If I was perfect, I'd be God. And I'm not God. I'm certain of that. And so I have to be able to give myself grace when I'm falling short in these areas of, like, okay, I catch it. Now what am I going to do about it? Right? Am I going to continue to experience it, or am I going to do something different? And that's what the last couple of nights have kind of looked like, right? Spending a little bit more time in prayer, trying to spend some more intentional time in prayer in the morning. I do need to get some more into the Bible just because that's something that I like to do, and I feel it's fundamental for my relationship with God, not necessarily anybody else's, but mine. And so, but it's just being aware, and once I'm aware, it's changing the behavior.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been reading the Bible too the past couple of months. I've never been consistent with the Bible till the past like 2-3 months. And it's been awesome, bro, and it's such a game changer. Like, it really is, and I do appreciate you being vulnerable too, man. Like, that's what essentially, like, that's an essential piece of this platform that I'm trying to do, is like being vulnerable, like, and letting other people know that it's okay that to fall short as long as you do something about it, obviously, but it's like other people are struggling as well. It's not just you, And so, do you feel like you've like found your purpose?
Yes. But it's not music, right? Music is a gift that I was given, and it's talent of mine, and I enjoy it and I use it. But at the end of the day, I truly believe my purpose is in recovery, right? It is to help and guide the next man in whatever way I can, right? And for me, I find that that's from a teaching perspective. And every dude that takes a man through the steps is a teacher, right? For me, it's like using platforms where I get to speak and share my experience and knowledge. Like, that's where I feel it's the most beneficial. And even in the one-on-one moments with guys, breaking things down in a way that's palatable for them, because I can explain stuff,
Yeah.
and everyone can explain stuff their own way. I just find that I have and this is something that I found in my careers, and this is stuff that's told to me. It's not just like my own arrogant, assessment of it all, right? People have told me that I have a unique ability to be able to break things down multiple different ways so that multiple different people could understand it the same way, right? And get the core understanding of what you're trying to say. And so
That's a very valuable thing, by the way.
yeah.
Very valuable.
And I love it because it does allow me to connect with others. And if someone doesn't understand something when I explain it to them the first time, I can break it down a different way. And if they don't understand that way, I'll break it down again and again and again and bring it down to the root fundamentals at some point if I have to. Or give them a bunch of imagery and metaphors and visual to help them understand. Whatever I need to do, because people learn differently. And you have to be able to adapt to that. And so I feel like that is truly where my purpose lies, is being able to teach whatever I can based on my experience.
Nice. And how do you feel like somebody can find their purpose? Somebody that might feel like they don't know what it is.
Yeah. I think the hardest part with that is like a lot of people will tell you to like search for it. The hard part with searching for a purpose is I find that most people look around them and they go, okay, what's this person doing? What's that person doing? And if, for me, purpose is really based in what would I do if no money was an object? If no money was an object, what would I do on a daily basis? And for me, that boils down to music, and I would spend time connecting with others, trying to share about me and learn about them. And if that's all I could do and not worry about a dime, I would do that all the time. And so it's the same thing with anybody that's listening, right, or watching. Like, what would you do? Would you go do pottery? Would you go do photography? Would you do something like this? And it doesn't have to be your work. A lot of people feel like work has to be fulfilling to them. And if work isn't fulfilling, then they feel like they're not able to meet their purpose. The truth is, work should be a means to an end. The jobs that I have today are merely to be able to pay the bills and to be able to give me the money to be able to do the things that I wanted to. Upgrade the studio equipment, buy a camera so that I can start shooting my own short form content, do photography, because my fulfillment is met outside of work. It's not met in work.
That's perfect, man. That's perfect. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people, including myself, has had that confused in the past. And yeah, that's such a beautiful answer, man. What's like one of the biggest struggles that you have faced throughout your journey in your relationship with God?
I would say, man, I spent a long time away from God. In the 8 years that I've been sober, probably about 3 to 4 of them, I really just did not pray, did not meditate, did not sponsor dudes, wasn't going to meetings, wasn't doing anything. And I just kind of was living my life for me. And I just remember I was sitting in a townhouse in Baltimore, Maryland, with a beautiful girl that I was dating in the first apartment I'd ever had my name on the lease on. I mean, I had a great job. Everything was going well externally, but internally, man, I just wanted to die. Like, I was so spiritually bankrupt. And, a few weeks later, 2 months later, whatever the timeline was, I moved out to Arizona, and I got connected to guys like you and, a bunch of other guys, right? The whole group of men that we know, and it changed my life, but that period of 3 years, right, was one of the hardest periods of my life because I didn't even realize that that's what I was experiencing, right, was sober spiritual bankruptcy. And that's a different level of discomfort. And so that's like the biggest one, I'd say. Now, I also want to say that, like, in general, my life's biggest struggle with my relationship with God is not getting in the way. Because I consistently can get in the way of myself and make decisions based off of my fears or off of my selfishness, like the things that I want or I feel like I need, delusions that I'll create in my head, right? And bitterness in my heart. Well, I'll make decisions based off of these things that don't align with what God actually wants me to do, or isn't where God wants me to be, or talk to, or talk like, whatever it is. And I feel like that's the biggest struggle is, they talk about, right, like, true sacrifice, right, and cutting on the flesh. It's like, do I surrender, or am I living for me? And that's the biggest struggle on a daily basis, right, that I think every human goes through, whether they realize it or not.
Yep, exactly, man. And yeah, man, that's so good. What is one of the most recent inspirations that you've received? Whether it was something that, that God has called you to keep pursuing, or something that you've read, or something that somebody has told you.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I just left. I just spoke at an event, and I always leave inspired from those things.
Even though you get there and you're like, damn.
Yeah, I don't want to do this. I'm tired. People don't even care. But it's always cool because I get to go through this journey of my life, and I'm reminded of things. And a lot of the times it's the same things, but sometimes it just hits a little bit different. And today it was just like thinking about the relationship with my parents and how that has shifted and molded, and relationships with sponsees and watching their lives change. And so it's just been really cool. Like, I just felt really overwhelmed with this sense of like gratitude and inspiration when I left. First thing I did was call my mom when I left, and of course she didn't answer because that's just her MO. But then she calls me back, and we sit in the car and talk about practicing these principles in all our affairs, because she's sober too, and so awesome. Yeah, it's really, really dope. And so we just sat there for 20 minutes. When you pulled up, I was sitting in the car just talking to her, and it's just so beautiful, man, because like that's the stuff that I sought for a long time. And so when on my day-to-day basis, I can take that for granted. And so those moments are really inspiring for me because they bring me back into a place of gratitude for it and remembrance that like I shouldn't take it for granted.
Right, yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And like that just goes to show the power of God, right? Like I don't know how your relationship might have looked like with her before, but two people that are sober now is amazing, and I'm sure that it didn't look like how it looked like today back then. So what's something that, so do you want to talk about like your upcoming project a little bit?
Yeah. So like I talked about, the first album I'll drop is going to be an album called Conversations with God. I have no release date for that. Okay. I'm dropping the first single off of it. That drops May 16th. It will be out on all platforms. And so that, like I said, is just a really, really personal prayer. It's probably about a year ago now that I recorded that. And I really was, man. I was just struggling to have faith in God. And I just remember, like, I think it's the second verse, I said something like, and Father, I wish that I could make sense of all this. I've been trying to fill my spirit because I've been avoidant. And, like, I just remember, like, really meaning that. Like, I just feel so avoidant to developing and maintaining and growing this relationship, ultimately nurturing it, right? And I just feel so avoidant to it. But I can't make sense of how to do it. And I can't make sense of, because I hear from all these people about their relationship with God. And what I've realized is I was trying so hard to develop and nurture and grow my relationship with God so that it looked like your relationship with God or his relationship with God, not recognizing that my relationship with God is personal to me and him, right? And so this song is really, really vulnerable. It was a super emotional one for me, just because I really was having a hard time in that moment. But that's why it's so meaningful. That's why it's the first one. I feel like it really speaks to the testimony of what God has done in and through me. And so that's the first song, man.
Awesome, man. No, that's amazing, man. And so, like, where can people find you at then?
Yeah. So my Instagram is iam Matteo Martinez with 2 T's, MatteoMartinez. And that's the only social media that you will find me on. I don't do TikTok. I don't do Twitter. I don't have a Facebook page. I just keep it really, really simple. I can't manage that much social media on my own. And so I keep it strictly to Instagram. When I drop everything on social or on streaming platforms, it'll be my first and last name, so Matteo Martinez. And so follow me on Instagram. You'll see more updates, and you'll be able to see. I post a lot of snippets of stuff, and I just, whenever I record some, I'm always like, yo, I want you guys to hear this. And so people hear stuff long before it comes out and probably hear it 3-4 times, sometimes 15, because I'm just so excited to share it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, and I've been, like, it's awesome seeing the journey too, bro. Like, seriously. And I'm glad we met, bro.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think we actually met, like, I think it was like 2 years ago at the retreat, but I actually, like, started talking to you at the men's stag.
Yeah.
So that's cool, man. I really do appreciate you doing this with me, man. And, like, yeah, dude, I'm excited for what you got going on. I'm excited for what our friendship has in store.
Absolutely.
For sure. And yeah, man, thank you. Thank you for doing this, bro.
Thank you, dog.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Word.
Thank you, bro.